Hey everyone, welcome back. Jumping right into Pete Walker's Complex PTSD,
Mm.
From Surviving to Thriving. Today,
Uh,
we're looking at chapters 3 and 4, and wow, relationships and healing, that's heavy stuff.
Right.
And, he even says at the beginning, he's like, if this is too much, maybe you sit this one out. And I thought, well, now I have to read it.
Right.
But, thankfully we have an expert on complex PTSD and narcissistic abuse to walk us through all this.
Yeah.
But something I found really interesting early on was this idea that healing can come from unexpected sources.
Right.
Like not just the big human relationships, but even like pets
Yes.
or even connecting with nature.
That's such a good point, and it really expands our understanding of what healing can even look like. And it makes a lot of sense when we look at complex PTSD through the lens of attachment theory.
Okay, so break that down for me. How does attachment play into this?
Well, at its core, complex PTSD, a lot of times it really stems from not having that secure and nurturing environment in childhood. So when we don't have that consistent, emotionally safe adult figure,
Right.
we really miss out on developing those key relational skills.
So it's like the foundation for healthy relationships is just kind of off,
Yeah,
which makes navigating connections so much harder.
absolutely.
It's like that example Walker gives of, the businessman who feels like a king in the boardroom,
Yes.
but then a drama queen on the inside.
Right,
Like
exactly.
they look so put together on the outside,
Right.
but inside, it's this whole other story.
And that's such a common experience for people with complex PTSD.
Yeah.
This fear of being exposed, of being judged, of being rejected.
Well, it's like this constant vulnerability hangover.
Yes, exactly.
And that's not something you would necessarily see from the outside, especially like for high achievers.
Exactly.
It really makes you realize that anyone could be struggling with this.
Absolutely. And, that fear of vulnerability, it makes intimacy so challenging.
Oh, yeah.
But, it's not impossible to overcome. And I can even remember this really pivotal moment in my own journey where I finally broke down and I just allowed myself to cry
Oh, wow.
in front of someone I trusted.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just overwhelmed with grief that I'd been holding back for years.
Wow.
And as terrifying as that release felt in the moment,
Right.
it was so incredibly healing.
Almost like you have to go through it to get to the other side.
Yes, exactly.
It's amazing how, like, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is allow yourself to be vulnerable.
Yes.
But it takes so much courage to get there.
It does. And that's where having external support becomes absolutely vital.
Right.
And Walker talks about how powerful therapy can be, especially group therapy, for healing shame.
Yeah.
Because when we can share our stories in this safe and supportive environment,
Right.
when we're met with compassion, we can actually start to cultivate self-compassion.
It's like we give ourselves permission to not be perfect, to not have it all figured out.
Exactly. And sometimes, part of that healing process might even involve creating a little bit of distance from those who might be reinforcing our shame.
Okay, so this is where the idea of parentedectomy comes in, right?
Yes, exactly.
Which I know can be a really loaded term.
Right. And his example of Joe really highlights this. Sometimes for your own personal growth,
Right?
you might need to reduce contact with toxic people, even if it's a parent,
Even if it's family.
even if it's family. Exactly.
So it's about recognizing when a relationship is no longer serving you.
Yes, absolutely. It's about setting healthy boundaries.
And that looks different for everyone, right?
Yes, exactly.
There's no one size fits all.
Exactly.
And speaking of boundaries, Walker also talks about healthy conflict resolution.
He does.
And he brings up John Gottman's work, which I love.
Oh, Gottman's great.
He's all about communication, those healthy relationship skills.
Absolutely. And he stresses that disagreements, they're a normal part of any relationship.
Right, like you're never going to agree with your partner 100% of the time.
Exactly. It's more about how we handle those disagreements. That makes all the difference.
Exactly. It's not about avoiding conflict altogether.
Right.
It's about navigating it in a healthy way.
And also recognizing that we can't expect our partners to meet all of our unmet needs from childhood.
Well, that's a good point, because sometimes we do put those expectations
Oh, we do.
on our partners to kind of fill those gaps.
And that's where the concept of reparenting comes into play.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because I think for some people that term might feel a little intimidating or even confusing.
Right. So essentially it's about providing ourselves with that unconditional love and support that every child deserves.
Okay.
And this involves both self-mothering and self-fathering.
Okay, so walk me through those. What does it actually mean to self-mother and self-father?
So self-mothering, imagine treating yourself with that same kindness, care, and understanding that a loving mother would offer It's about really tuning into your own needs, especially when you're feeling triggered or insecure.
So it's like providing that nurturing presence for yourself that you may not have consistently received growing up.
Exactly. And then there's self-fathering, which is all about building assertiveness and self-protection.
Okay.
So if self-mothering is that nurturing presence, self-fathering is that inner advocate that says, hey, your needs matter. You deserve to be treated with respect.
So like setting boundaries, advocating for yourself, learning to say no, those are all part of self-fathering.
Exactly. Developing that inner protector.
And Walker says both of these, both self-mothering and self-fathering, are crucial for healing from complex PTSD, right?
Yes, they really go hand in hand.
So let's dive a little deeper into self-mothering. You mentioned unconditional positive regard.
Yes.
How do we actually offer that to ourselves, especially when we've internalized so much negativity?
Well, inner child work, that's where that can be so powerful.
Okay.
One tool Walker suggests is using affirmations. So instead of getting stuck in that cycle of self-criticism, we can actually kind of intentionally flood our minds with those positive messages. Messages of self-love, acceptance, and support.
It's like we're consciously rewiring our brains for self-compassion,
Exact.
which I think is so important because so much of this is unconscious, right?
Yeah.
It's those deep-seated beliefs and patterns.
Exactly.
But with self-fathering, what are some practical steps we can take to really start building that inner protector?
Walker talks about this exercise called the time machine rescue operation.
Okay, I remember reading about this. That sounds really intense.
It is.
But I can also see how it could be so empowering.
Absolutely.
So tell me more about that.
So you basically visualize yourself going back in time to rescue your younger self from those traumatic situations. So it's not about literally changing what happened, but it's about changing our relationship to the past.
It's about reclaiming that power, that agency.
Right, exactly.
Because so often with trauma, it feels like we're just totally powerless.
Yeah. Exactly.
But we have more power than we realize.
Yeah,
Right.
you absolutely do, and we don't have to do this alone.
Right. That's so important to remember.
Walker talks about building a reparenting committee.
Oh, I love that.
So this could be therapists, friends, mentors, authors.
Even people we haven't met, right? Like people we admire from afar.
Absolutely.
It's like building this chosen family who can offer us that care and support.
Exactly. And that support is so crucial as we navigate the oftentimes messy process of recovery.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know, one thing that really struck me in these chapters is Walker's emphasis on patience.
Okay.
He even compares managing complex PTSD to managing a chronic condition like diabetes.
Wow, that's a really powerful analogy.
Yeah.
Because it really highlights that this isn't a quick fix, right?
It's not. It's an ongoing process.
It's not like you just wake up one day and you're totally healed.
Exactly. There's going to be good days and bad days.
Absolutely.
And that's okay.
It's part of the process. So how do we know if we're on the right track? Like, what are some signs of progress, even if it's not linear?
Well, one key indicator is a reduction in the intensity and frequency of those flashbacks.
Okay.
They might not disappear completely,
Right.
but we can learn to manage them more effectively.
It's like we're building up those emotional regulation muscles, right?
Exactly.
The more we practice, the stronger we become.
Yes, and as we become more skilled at regulating our emotions,
Right.
that inner critic, it starts to quiet down.
Yes, it's like we're taking away its ammunition.
Exactly.
The less reactive we are, the less power it has over us.
And as that inner critic loses its grip, we can actually start to access more peace, more relaxation, more self-awareness.
Like that space finally opens up.
Yes, and you might even notice yourself setting healthier boundaries, engaging in more activities that bring you joy.
Right, like actually enjoying life.
Exactly.
Instead of just trying to survive it.
And you just feel more equipped to handle whatever life throws at you.
That's the whole thriving part, right? It's not just about surviving the trauma anymore.
Exactly.
It's about actually thriving in your life.
Now, it's important to remember that this process, it isn't always linear.
Yeah, we've said that before, but I think it bears repeating.
Absolutely.
Because it's so easy to get discouraged, right?
It is. And Walker, he outlines these different stages of recovery.
Oh,
And it all starts with cognitive understanding.
So like educating ourselves about complex PTSD,
Yes.
recognizing the patterns in our own lives.
Right. Putting a name to what we've been experiencing.
Which I think can be so validating in itself, right?
Absolutely. Because then you realize you're not alone.
Exactly. It's not just you.
And it's not your fault.
Right, exactly.
And with that understanding, we can actually start to dismantle those negative core beliefs.
Okay, so this is where the real work begins.
Right.
Because those beliefs, They're so deeply ingrained.
They
It's
are.
like they become part of our identity.
Exactly. But as we start to challenge those beliefs, we create space for the next stage, which is emotional grieving.
Okay, so this is where things get really real.
Yes. It's about facing all those suppressed emotions, the pain, the sadness, the anger that we've been carrying for so long.
And that can feel really scary,
It
right?
can be terrifying.
Because it's like opening up this Pandora's box of all this unprocessed pain.
And it's about acknowledging the losses that we've experienced, both in childhood and adulthood, as a result of that trauma.
And sometimes it's not even conscious, right? Like
Exactly.
we don't even realize the extent of the loss until we start digging in and doing the work.
And the truth is, we can't heal what we don't allow ourselves to feel.
That's such a powerful statement.
And true liberation, it comes from feeling it all.
It's like we're finally giving ourselves permission to feel those things
Yes.
that we maybe didn't feel safe enough to feel before.
Exactly. And you don't have to go through it alone.
Right.
Reaching out for support, whether it's therapy or support groups or trusted friends.
Right, your reparenting committee.
Exactly.
It's like we're building that safety net to catch us. When we inevitably fall apart a little bit, because let's be real, healing isn't always pretty.
It's not linear, that's for sure.
Exactly. And Walker even talks about these things called therapeutic flashbacks,
Yeah.
which sound kind of scary.
They can be a little bit alarming, yeah.
What are those exactly?
So they're like these bursts of discomfort, fear, reactivity
Okay.
that come up as we're doing the work.
So it's like we think we're doing better,
Right.
and then all of a sudden, bam.
Exactly. And it can feel like we're backsliding.
Right, like we're going backwards.
But those intense feelings are actually a sign that we're pushing up against those old wounds
Okay.
in a safe enough space to heal them.
So it's almost like a good sign,
It is a good sign.
even though it feels terrible in the moment.
Exactly, like growing pains, uncomfortable, but ultimately a sign of growth.
I like that, growing pains.
Oh.
And it's a good reminder that healing isn't linear.
It's not. There will be setbacks, twists, and turns along the way.
It's like life, right?
Exactly.
Life's messy, and so is healing.
It is.
But there's something really hopeful about that, about giving ourselves permission to not have it all figured out.
Absolutely.
And as we do that, as we continue to challenge those old patterns and beliefs,
Yes.
we start to experience the silver linings of healing.
Yes, we do.
Walker talks about this, that it's not just about surviving anymore, it's about thriving.
Exactly. He describes positive outcomes like increased emotional intelligence, deeper intimacy, a richer inner life.
So it's like not only are we healing from the trauma,
Yeah,
but we're actually coming out on the other side stronger and wiser
absolutely. With a new appreciation for life.
and more compassionate, right?
Yes, towards ourselves and others.
And I think part of that wisdom is recognizing that we don't have to be happy all the time.
Yes, that's so
That
important.
whole don't worry, be happy message,
Yeah.
it just doesn't resonate.
It's so invalidating, especially for trauma survivors.
Exactly. Because it's like we're allowed to feel our feelings.
Exactly. Healing isn't about slapping on a happy face. It's about honoring the full spectrum of human emotions.
Even the messy ones. Especially the messy ones.
Especially the messy ones, because that's where the growth is.
Well, this has been such an incredible conversation.
Thank you.
So much to think about, so much to digest.
Yes.
If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, just one, what would it be?
I think I'd tell myself that vulnerability is not a weakness,
Oh, that's a good one.
that asking for help is actually a sign of strength,
Yes.
and that above all else, I am worthy of love and belonging.
That's beautiful
Thank you.
and so true. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey.
Yes, thank you.
It's been a deep dive, but we hope you found it helpful, insightful, and maybe even a little bit healing.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time.